at the algal bloom concentration of algae on Lake Winnipeg and how that relates to other pieces of information. So, for example, we have one researcher who does the remote sensing analysis. We have another researcher who did the surface chemistry analysis at sample stations on Lake Winnipeg at around the same times. We have another researcher whose expertise is algal taxonomy. So she actually counted those algae. So we can tell you not only what was there, we can tell you what other kind of chemistry was going on at the time, and what it looked like from the air and from the ground. So this is the sites, the series we had plotted on the story map is from 2004 till 2009. And we've provided them with satellite imagery on the ship. We were on the Nemeo, and on select stations we went through and we did nitrogen fixation experiments. So nitrogen fixation tells us how much cyanobacteria is in the water column and how much nitrogen they're fixing from the atmosphere, because that is what enables them to dominate when other species of algae have used up all the phosphorus or used up all the nitrogen in the lake. So we can tell in areas that should look very much like our satellite image where those areas of high cyanobacterial productivity were at the time. And then we have a 2005 image, so you compare that same area or the lake from August 2004 to August 2005. And we can show you a count of the actual algae in one of the stations on the lake at the time. Move to another year, and this is a slightly different image, but we can show you that in the South Basin in that year, this is what you can see where that location is. This is a geo-referenced image just for your reference. So I was lucky I didn't have to attach my spatial location data to it. It was done for me. So I just had to add it to the map, and the map automatically pops up with the spatial location and shows you what that shoreline looks like at the time. So we know that in September of 2006, the shoreline in this area looked like that. So there may have been blooms around the lake in other areas, but in that area it was fine. And we have a record of, this was a DFO initiative. They went out in 2005 and 2006 and did shoreline habitat. They were looking for habitat impacts of shoreline structures. And they went out and flew the South Basin of Lake Winnipeg, and they have provided those images for us to be able to provide them to a broader audience. Now we did this mashup, but by providing all those different pieces of information on our site, users can also do that for themselves. So we're providing information in a story where we think there's a need for that information to get out specifically, or it's been asked for, but we, more importantly, are giving users the ability to do that for themselves, and we're giving them some of the tools through GIS that they can do it with without ever having to have extensive GIS skills or having to bear the cost associated with that. And that's just 2007 and 2008 satellite images as well, in 2009. So and I just added one more image, which is a bathymetric map of the lake, which doesn't change that much from year to year. But again, it's a really important piece of information that people should know to understand some of the dynamics of what happens in the lake. You have to understand what the bathymetry is of the lake. So the bathymetry being what the depth is at certain, at all areas of the lake. And a bloom, which was associated with a satellite image from 2009 in the South Basin. So we have our high spatial resolution image, and then our sort of low level on the ground image associated with it as well. So our philosophy at the end of the day is that until a broad audience can know and understand your data, then the work isn't really done. And just to give you an idea of where we're at, so our site right now has minimal data sets loaded because, again, another thing identified is that especially all our historical data sets, they weren't really that pretty. There's still some work that needs to be done in order to process them, in order to QA/QC some of them, and in order to provide them in a format that's accessible, again, to a broader audience. So we're in the process of doing that, and part of that is building an underlying data architecture that allows us to automate that process, so that going forward we can keep collecting our massive amounts of data and upload them automatically to our site. So we essentially have sort of one area for working data sets with our researchers, and some proprietary data. For example, there can be issues around traditional knowledge information and what can be shared to a broader audience. There are issues around data sets that are currently being analyzed because there's embargoes for example, master's students to write a paper or personal information. And we're trying to work with citizen science groups to facilitate sharing that information that they can collect and associating it with a broader scientific data field of information. And that's it. Thank you.